I was standing in front of my son's grave when I heard it. A child's laughter. Then I saw him. The same eyes, the same smile, clutching the same bear I'd given my boy decades ago. And his mother. The moment she saw me, her face went pale. She grabbed him like I was danger itself. Who was she running from? Why had she been hiding? And why did that little boy call my son Papa? I thought I'd come to grieve. Instead, I walked straight into a secret. Turns out, the real story was just beginning. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. 4 years to the day, and the wound still felt fresh. The cemetery's iron gates creaked shut behind me as I nodded to the groundskeeper. He knew me by now. Every Thursday at 10, rain or shine, the Vance family plot sprawled across the eastern corner. Generations of my family resting under identical gray stones. My heels clicked against the path as dark clouds gathered overhead. The weatherman had promised rain by noon. I'd make this quick. Habit carried me past my husband's grave, past my parents, toward the newest stone, the one I still couldn't believe existed. The newest Vance, my son. The cemetery smelled of fresh-cut grass and wet earth. Spring was coming, though you wouldn't know it today. My mind wandered to the quarterly projections waiting on my desk. The acquisition meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Work helped. Work always helped. I slowed as I approached Arthur's grave, noticing something out of place. Someone had been here already. A small bunch of wildflowers, nothing fancy, just daisies and black-eyed Susans, leaned against his headstone. I frowned. Who would leave these? Julian only visited on Christmas and birthdays, and Arthur's college friends had gradually stopped coming. Before I could get closer, I heard it. Laughter. A child's laughter, bright and unrestrained. I stepped behind a large oak tree, suddenly feeling like an intruder in my own family cemetery. A young woman sat on a small blanket spread before Arthur's grave. She couldn't have been more than 30. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Jeans with a patch on one knee, a worn blue jacket. Nothing expensive but everything clean. Beside her, a small boy bounced on his knees, talking animatedly to the headstone. And then Mr. Bear was very brave and didn't cry at all when he got a shot. The boy was saying. The teddy bear in his hands was worn almost threadbare in spots. My heart stopped. That bear. I knew that bear. It was Benson, Arthur's bear. The one I'd given him for his 5th birthday. The one he'd slept with until he was 12 and then kept on his bookshelf through college. But that wasn't what made my breath catch in my throat. It was the boy's face, his eyes deep blue with that slight tilt at the corners. The way his mouth quirked up higher on the right when he smiled. The small cleft in his chin. Arthur's eyes. Arthur's smile. Arthur's chin. I gripped the tree trunk, suddenly dizzy. Tell Papa what else happened at the doctor. The woman prompted softly. Papa. She'd called Arthur Papa. My mind raced through calculations. The boy looked about 4. Arthur had been gone exactly 4 years today. The timing fit, but Arthur had never mentioned anyone. Never brought a woman home. Never hinted at a relationship serious enough to produce a child. Had he known? Had my son died knowing he was going to be a father? The boy was making the bear dance now along the edge of the headstone. Completely at ease with the marble marker. This wasn't their first visit. Leo, careful with Benson, the woman said, confirming my suspicion about the bear. Remember, he's very old and special. Leo. The boy's name was Leo. I watched them for another minute, trying to steady my breathing. The woman was gentle with him, attentive. She looked tired in a bone-deep way I recognized from raising 2 boys while running a company. She brushed the boy's hair back exactly the way Arthur used to brush his own. From his forehead. I stepped out from behind the tree. My movement caught the woman's attention immediately. Her head snapped up, eyes widening with unmistakable recognition. She knew who I was. Hi, Leo said brightly, oblivious to the sudden tension. This is my papa. He patted the headstone like it was a person. The woman had gone very still. One hand reached out instinctively, pulling the boy a few inches closer to her. Who are you? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She swallowed, her eyes darting to the cemetery entrance as if measuring the distance. That boy, I said, my gaze fixed on Leo. He has my son's eyes. The child looked between us, confused but still smiling. He clutched Benson tighter. "I'm sorry," the woman whispered, "we should go." Her hands trembled as she started gathering their things. A small container of apple slices, a juice box, the blanket's corner. "That's Benson," I said, pointing to the teddy bear. "Arthur's bear. I gave it to him when he was 5. The ear got torn when he tried to save it from our old dog." Leo looked down at the bear in surprise, then back at me with wonder. "You knew Benson when he was new?" "I did," I said, taking another step closer. "And I knew your papa." The woman was on her feet now. Blanket hastily folded. Backpack slung over one shoulder. "Please," I said, "don't go." "What's your name?" "Elena," she said after a pause. "Elena Garcia." She looked like she regretted the admission instantly. "And you knew my son?" It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. Her hand firmly gripping Leo's shoulder now. "We need to talk, Elena." "I can't," her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance, we have to go." "Are you his mother?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "Yes." There was steel in her voice now. Something protective and fierce. "And Arthur?" "Yes." "Why didn't you come before? Why didn't you tell me?" 4 years of missed birthdays, first words, first steps. 4 years I hadn't known my grandson existed. Fear flashed across her face. "I should never have come here. It was selfish. But Leo asks about his father and I wanted him to have some connection." "Please," I said, reaching into my purse for a business card. "Take this. Call me, whatever you need." "We don't need anything." She was backing away now, pulling Leo with her. The boy looked confused, still clutching Benson. "Mama, can't we finish our picnic?" "Not today, buddy, we have to go now." But I didn't finish telling Papa about the doctor. "Another time, Leo." She was practically dragging him now. "Wait," I called, "please." But they were hurrying down the path. Elena's face set with determination, Leo looking back over his shoulder. "Bye, lady," he called, waving Benson's paw at me. I stood rooted to the spot, watching them disappear through the cemetery gates. My grandson, Arthur's son. The teddy bear I'd bought nearly 30 years ago. My driver appeared at my side. "Everything all right, Mrs. Vance?" I didn't answer immediately. I stared at the small bunch of wild flowers propped against the headstone, then at my own white roses, still clutched in my hand. "Yes, Thomas," I said finally, "take me back to the office." As we walked toward the car, I knelt and placed my roses beside the wildflowers. My fingers traced Arthur's name carved in cold marble. "You had a son," I whispered. "He has your eyes and your bear." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me? And why is she so afraid?" The stone offered no answers, but for the first time in 4 years, I felt something beyond grief. Something with teeth and purpose. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. "I'll find out what happened," I promised. "I'll take care of your boy." As I walked back to the car, the first raindrops began to fall. But my mind was clear. I had calls to make, people to hire, questions that needed answers. Arthur had a son, I had a grandson. And someone had kept us apart for 4 years. I barely remember the drive home from the cemetery. My mind kept replaying the image of that little boy with Arthur's eyes, clutching the same bear I'd bought decades ago. My grandson. The word felt foreign, impossible. Thomas opened the car door when we reached the house. His face carefully neutral. He'd worked for me long enough to know when not to ask questions. "Will you be needing anything else, Mrs. Vance?" "No thank you, I'll be in my study." The house felt too quiet as I walked through the foyer. It had felt that way for 4 years. I headed straight to my study, the one room that still felt like mine alone. Mahogany panels lined the walls, warmed by the afternoon light filtering through tall windows overlooking the garden. Arthur's Harvard diploma still hung beside the fireplace. I hadn't been able to move it. I hung my coat on the rack, poured 2 fingers of scotch from the crystal decanter, and sat at my desk. The same desk where I'd signed my first acquisition as CEO. Where I'd helped both boys with their homework. Where I'd planned Arthur's funeral. My hand found the silver frame on the corner of my desk. Arthur at his 30th birthday, laughing. His last birthday. This couldn't wait. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Frank Delaney answered on the second ring. "Delaney." "Frank, it's Amelia Vance." "Mrs. Vance. What can I do for you?" His voice warmed slightly. We'd known each other 20 years. He'd vetted merger partners, handled internal theft cases, managed sensitive PR nightmares. I need your help with something personal, completely confidential. Of course. I took a sip of scotch. There's a woman named Elena Garcia. She has a 4-year-old son named Leo. The words still felt surreal. I believe the boy is Arthur's son. Silence on the line. Frank knew what this meant. I need you to verify everything. Where she lives, her work, her background. Most importantly, whether they're safe. Do you suspect they're in danger? I don't know. She seemed frightened when she saw me. Not guilty, frightened.
What exactly do you need to know?
Everything, I said, but be discreet. If she is Arthur, if that boy is my grandson, I don't want to scare her off again. I understand, I'll start immediately. The study door opened and Julian appeared. I hadn't heard him come in. Frank, I need to go. Call me as soon as you have anything. I hung up, composing my face. Julian looked like he'd just stepped out of a board meeting. Tailored suit perfectly pressed, his dark hair neatly combed. He'd grown more polished since taking over Arthur's responsibilities. More like his brother in some ways, though he'd hate to hear that comparison. Mother, I thought I'd check on you. He kissed my cheek. Difficult day, I imagine. I nodded. The anniversary is never easy. He settled into the leather chair across from my desk, unbuttoning his jacket with practiced ease. How was the cemetery? Something made me hesitate. Julian and I had grown closer since Arthur's death, necessarily so. He'd stepped up admirably at the company. But this felt too raw, too fragile to share. Yet I found myself wanting to gauge his reaction. I met someone there, I said carefully. A young woman and her son, visiting Arthur's grave. Julian's eyebrows rose. At our family cemetery, that's unusual. The boy is 4 years old, I said, watching his face. He looks exactly like Arthur. Julian went very still. What do you mean? I mean he has Arthur's eyes, Arthur's smile. He was even holding Benson. Benson. Arthur's old bear? Julian's surprise seemed genuine. That's quite a coincidence. It's not a coincidence, Julian. The woman Elena confirmed it. The boy is Arthur's son. Julian leaned forward, his expression shifting to concern. Mother, that seems convenient, doesn't it? A woman and child appearing 4 years later at the cemetery. She wasn't appearing. They were already there when I arrived. Even so, Julian's voice softened. A woman claiming her child belongs to a wealthy deceased man? It's a classic gold digger scheme. The word stung. You didn't see him, Julian. He's Arthur's spitting image. Mother, he reached across the desk for my hand. I know your heart. I know how much you miss Arthur. But we need to be practical. People research their marks. They know how to play on emotions. She wasn't asking for anything. In fact, she tried to leave as soon as she saw me. Julian's smile was gentle, patronizing. Of course she did. It's part of the act. Make you chase her, make you feel like you're the one pursuing the connection. I pulled my hand away. I've hired Frank to look into her background. Something flashed in Julian's eyes. Concern? Annoyance? It was gone before I could identify it. That's a good first step, he said smoothly. But please let me handle this. I'll protect you from being hurt again. You've been through enough. I appreciate your concern, Julian, but I want to see Frank's report first. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Just promise me you won't contact her until we know more. People like this, they're professionals at emotional manipulation. I'll wait for Frank's report, I repeated. After Julian left, I sat in the quiet of my study, wondering why his concern felt off-key somehow, like a piano slightly out of tune. A week passed. I tried to focus on work, but my thoughts kept drifting to Leo. Did he like dinosaurs like Arthur had? Was he afraid of thunderstorms? Did he know anything about his father beyond a cold headstone and stories? Frank called on Thursday morning. I have preliminary information. Can I come by this afternoon? He arrived at 2, manila folder tucked under his arm. I led him to my study and closed the door. What did you find? Frank opened his folder. Elena Garcia, 29, single mother living in an apartment in Parkside. Not the best neighborhood, not the worst. She works 2 jobs, junior draftsperson at Manning Architectural during the day, waitress at Rosario's on weekends. She's an architect? Something about that felt right. Arthur had always appreciated design. Not fully licensed. She was in graduate school but dropped out 4 years ago, right around the time your son died. She has significant student loan debt. I nodded. Go on. No criminal record. Her current landlord speaks highly of her, says she's quiet and always pays on time, even if occasionally late. The boy, Leo, attends Little Sprouts daycare while she's at work. And Frank hesitated. There are some flags. She was evicted from her previous apartment 4 years ago. There's a gap in employment around that time. And she had some medical bills go to collection after the boy was born. She was pregnant and alone, I said quietly. There's something else. Frank handed me several photographs. The boy at the playground near their apartment. My breath caught. In the first photo, Leo was coming down a slide, arms raised, face alight with joy. It could have been Arthur at that age. The same cowlick in his hair, the same dimple when he smiled. The resemblance is... It's him, I whispered. It's Arthur. The study door opened. Julian stood there, his timing too perfect to be coincidence. I thought I heard voices. His eyes flicked to Frank, then the photos in my hand. The investigator's report? Frank looked to me. I nodded slightly. I was just leaving. Frank gathered his things. I'll continue looking into the matters we discussed, Mrs. Vance. After he left, Julian settled into the chair across from me. So, what did he find? I shared the basics, watching Julian's reactions carefully. 2 jobs, student loans, an eviction, collection notices. Julian ticked off on his fingers. See, mother? A pattern of financial desperation. She's looking for a lifeline. She's a single mother working 2 jobs to support her son. I countered. Or she's setting the stage. Create sympathy, then make her move. Julian's voice was reasonable, concerned. If she's struggling so badly, why not approach us sooner? Why wait 4 years? The question nagged at me too. I think we should offer her a one-time payment. Julian continued, enough to help with the boy but with an agreement to stay away. Trust me, bringing them into our lives will only lead to heartbreak. He left with a parting shot that lingered uncomfortably. I'll look into her background a bit more deeply. There's always more to these stories. Alone again, I spread the photos across my desk. In one, Leo was laughing, head thrown back, eyes crinkled at the corners. Exactly like Arthur when he found something truly funny. I remembered him at 6, laughing that same way when his father chased him around the pool. Julian's warnings rattled in my head. She's desperate. It's a scam. Protect yourself. But something wasn't adding up. If Elena wanted money, why run from me at the cemetery? Why 4 years of silence? And that fear in her eyes. That wasn't the look of someone executing a con. That was genuine terror. I'd been letting Julian make too many decisions since Arthur died. It was easier that way in my grief. But this was different. This was my grandson. I slipped Leo's photo into my desk drawer, separate from Frank's report. Then I picked up the phone again. It was time to trust my own instincts. I had the driver drop me a block away. The apartment building matched Frank's description. A faded brick structure with window air conditioning units dotting its facade like afterthoughts. The security door hung askew on its hinges, locked but easily pushed open. Inside, the hallway smelled of curry and cleaning products. The carpet worn to threads in the center. Apartment 412. I took a deep breath before knocking. Footsteps approached, then stopped. I sensed eyes on me through the peephole. A long pause followed before the door opened just enough to reveal Elena Garcia. Her eyes wide with surprise. Mrs. Vance. Her voice barely audible. How did you find me? I needed to speak with you, I said, ignoring her question. May I come in? She glanced nervously down the hallway, then back at me. Leo is napping. I'll be quiet. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped back, opening the door just enough for me to enter. The apartment was small but meticulously clean. A sofa with a carefully patched armrest faced a small television. Bookshelves made from milk crates lined one wall, holding a modest collection of children's books and architectural texts. Crayon drawings were taped to the refrigerator, bright splashes of color against the aged appliance. It's not much, Elena said, folding her arms defensively. It's a home, I replied, noticing how she relaxed slightly at that. A pile of mail sat on the counter. On top was an envelope with bold red lettering. Final notice. Mama? A sleepy voice called from the hallway. Leo appeared, rubbing his eyes, Benson the bear tucked under one arm. His face brightened when he saw me. It's the lady from Papa's Stone. Hello, Leo, I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. Are you here to see Benson again? He held up the bear. I would love to. While Leo retrieved his treasured possessions to show me, Elena moved nervously around the kitchen, filling a sippy cup with juice. I noticed her hands trembling slightly. Leo, honey, why don't you show Mrs. Vance your drawings while I make us some tea? As Leo spread his artwork on the coffee table, I noticed his breath catching oddly. He stopped mid-sentence, a slight wheeze audible. Elena was beside him instantly. Do you need your medicine, sweetheart? He nodded, the wheezing more pronounced. She retrieved an inhaler from a drawer, helping him take 2 puffs. Slow breaths, remember? I watched as she rubbed his back, her expertise born of practice. The way she counted his breaths, the way she kept her own fear hidden from him. When Leo's breathing normalized, she sent him to get his favorite book. As soon as he was out of earshot, she turned to me. I'm sorry about that. His asthma acts up sometimes with excitement. Does he need to see a doctor? She looked away. We had a checkup last month. The specialist wants to try a different medication, but, she hesitated, our insurance has a high deductible. The apartment suddenly felt very small. I thought of my temperature-controlled mansion with its unused bedrooms and manicured grounds. The contrast was physically painful. Leo returned with his book, breathing better but still flushed. He climbed onto the sofa beside me, already comfortable in that way children have of accepting new people. Would you like me to read to you? I asked. He nodded, settling against the cushions with Benson. While I read, Elena disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the quiet click of a pill bottle. Saw her quickly swallow something with water. Stress medication perhaps, or something for pain she was ignoring. After the story, Leo went to play with his toys, giving us a moment to talk. I noticed another envelope on the counter, from the electric company. The corner was torn, revealing a disconnection warning. Elena, I began carefully. I want to understand what happened between you and Arthur. Her eyes darted to Leo, ensuring he was out of earshot. We met at a charity event. I was working as a server while in graduate school. He kept coming back to my station, asking questions about my studies. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He was so easy to talk to, not what I expected from someone like him. And you fell in love. She nodded. He wanted to tell everyone about us, but the timing was never right. There were company issues, family matters. Then he found out I was pregnant. Her voice broke slightly. He was so happy. He said it was time to introduce me properly. He had a plan. But he died before he could. Yes, the word barely audible. Why didn't you come to me after? I asked, the question that had burned in me since the cemetery. Fear flashed across her face. I tried once, early on. I went to the funeral home but couldn't make myself go in. Everyone was there, all these important people, and I was nobody. It wasn't the whole truth. I could see it in her eyes, the way they flickered away from mine. There was something else, something she wasn't saying. And now I asked, what's changed? She gestured helplessly at the apartment. Everything and nothing. Leo asks about his father constantly. I wanted him to feel some connection. A small coughing fit from Leo interrupted us. Elena watched him with the hypervigilance of a mother who couldn't afford to miss any warning sign. The air quality in this building isn't good for his asthma, she said quietly. But moving somewhere better. I have a proposal, I said, cutting through the unspoken financial impossibility. My estate has a guest house, 2 bedrooms, its own kitchen, clean air, a yard for Leo to play in. Elena stiffened. Mrs. Vance, I don't want your money. I'm not offering money. I'm offering sanctuary, a safe place for my grandson. I can't accept charity. It's not charity, Elena. It's family. I leaned forward. I don't know the whole story yet, but I know that boy is my grandson. He has Arthur's eyes, his laugh. He's carrying Benson, for God's sake. Leo ran over, interrupting us again. Mama, Benson is hungry. In a minute, sweetheart, Elena said, her mind clearly racing. Would there be grass? Leo asked suddenly, looking at me. For Benson to play on? Leo, Elena cautioned. Yes, I told him. There's a big yard with trees to climb and grass to run on. His eyes widened. Can we go there, Mama, please? Elena looked at her son, then at the eviction notice on the counter. The inhaler on the table. I could see the calculation in her eyes, weighing fears against needs. I don't know what happened after Arthur died, I said quietly. But I can see you're afraid of something, someone maybe. She tensed, confirming my suspicion. This is my home, my property, I continued. My grandson will be safe there, I will personally ensure it. Leo coughed again, the sound rattling in his small chest. We can try it, Elena said finally, for Leo's sake. The move happened quickly. Elena and Leo's possessions filled only the trunk of my car. Leo chattered excitedly the whole drive, pointing at things through the window. Elena sat silent beside him, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. When we passed through the gates of the estate, I heard her soft intake of breath. The main house came into view first. 3 stories of stone and dignity. I directed Thomas toward the guest house, a cottage nestled among oak trees at the edge of the garden. This is where we'll live. Leo pressed his face against the window, eyes wide. The guest house had been closed since my mother-in-law passed 15 years ago. I'd had it cleaned and prepared as soon as I made my decision. It was simple but charming, with large windows and a small front porch. Inside, Elena moved from room to room as if in a dream. The fully stocked refrigerator. The small second bedroom set up for Leo with colorful bedding and a bookshelf of children's classics. The bathroom with its deep tub and cabinet of toiletries. This is too much, she whispered. Look, Mama, Leo called from the second bedroom. A desk for you, with pencils for making buildings. I'd remembered what Frank said about her architectural studies. The drafting table fit perfectly beneath the window, supplies arranged neatly in their holders. Elena touched the edge of the table, then covered her mouth with her hand. For a moment, I thought she might crumble completely. Arthur would have appreciated this space. He always noticed people's passions. I said. A tear slipped down her cheek. He would have loved this place. Yes, I agreed. He would have. I left them to settle in, promising to check on them in the morning. As I walked back to the main house, I felt lighter than I had in 4 years. The hole in my heart wasn't gone, but its edges seemed less ragged. Julian was waiting in the foyer when I entered. Mother, I've been calling you. His irritation quickly masked with concern. Where have you been all day? I had errands to run. He followed me into the living room. Regarding the Elena Garcia situation, I've been thinking about your safety. These types of people can be unpredictable when their schemes don't work out. Actually, I said, turning to face him, Elena and Leo have moved into the guest house. Julian went perfectly still. What? They moved in today. The boy needs a safe place to live, and I want to know my grandson. Mother, his voice tight with controlled emotion. You've invited complete strangers to live on our property without any verification of their claims? Leo is Arthur's son, I have no doubt. This is reckless. What about background checks? Security concerns? The company's reputation? My decision is final, Julian. He stared at me for a long moment, then visibly composed himself. Of course, it's your home, I just worry about you. That night, I watched from my bedroom window as lights glowed in the guest house. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something like peace. Over the next 2 weeks, Leo blossomed in his new environment. His asthma improved with the clean air and regular medication. Elena gradually relaxed, though I noticed how she constantly checked on Leo, even in the safety of the estate. She still hadn't told me everything. I knew that, but I didn't press. Trust would come with time. On Saturday, Julian surprised us by stopping by during lunch. I thought I'd see how our guests are settling in, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Uncle Julian. Leo had taken to calling him that immediately, though Julian had visited only twice before. Hey sport, say, it's hot today. Is that a swimming pool I saw back there? Can we swim, Mama, please? Elena looked uncertain. I don't know if that's appropriate. Nonsense, I said. The pool is heated, let me show you where the towels are kept. While Elena helped Leo change, Julian wandered the pool area admiring the landscaping. You've really rolled out the red carpet, Mother. Their family. Of course, his smile tightened. Family. Elena's phone rang just as Leo was ready to enter the pool. She glanced at it, frowning. It's my old firm, I should take this. Go ahead, Julian offered. I'll watch the little man. The gate, Elena reminded him. It needs to stay locked. Leo doesn't swim well yet. Don't worry. Julian waved her concern away. We'll be fine. I was adjusting the umbrella when I heard the splash. My heart stopped. Leo was in the deep end, arms flailing. I screamed for Elena as I ran toward the pool. Julian appeared from somewhere, diving in fully clothed. He reached Leo just before I could, pulling him to the surface. Elena arrived as Julian was lifting Leo onto the pool deck. The boy coughed up water, crying. "The gate was unlocked," I said, confused. "How did the gate get unlocked?" Elena gathered Leo in her arms, her face ashen. I told you about the gate." "I'm sure I locked it," Julian said, water dripping from his clothes. "These old latches can be tricky." That night, as the house quieted, I heard Julian's car start in the driveway. Through my window, I watched his taillights disappear down the drive. His phone pressed to his ear. Something cold settled in my stomach. Something like suspicion. I was in my study the next morning, still troubled by the pool incident, when Thomas knocked on the door. "Mrs. Vance, there are 2 people here from Child Protective Services." My head snapped up. "Child Protective Services?" "Yes, ma'am. They're asking to speak with you regarding Leo Garcia." A chill ran through me. "Show them in, please." 2 women entered, professionally dressed with clipboards. The older one spoke first. "Mrs. Vance, I'm Susan Myers and this is my colleague Denise Wilson. We're with the Department of Children and Family Services." I stood, extending my hand. "What can I do for you?" "We've received an anonymous report regarding a child named Leo Garcia, currently residing on your property." "What kind of report?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart rate had doubled. "The report alleges child endangerment. Specifically, a near-drowning incident yesterday, allegedly due to parental neglect. The report also suggests unsuitable living conditions." "That's absurd." My voice emerged automatically, calm but authoritative. "There was an incident yesterday, yes. The pool gate was mysteriously unlocked, contrary to our standard safety protocols. The child is fine and his mother was not negligent in any way." Ms. Myers made a note. "We'll need to see the living arrangements and speak with Ms. Garcia and the child." "Of course, I'll take you to the guest house." As we walked across the grounds, my mind raced. An anonymous report filed immediately after the incident. This was no coincidence. Elena's face drained of color when she saw us approaching with clipboards. Leo, oblivious to the tension, was delighted by visitors. "These ladies are from Child Protective Services," I explained gently. "They need to ask a few questions about yesterday's pool incident." Terror flashed in Elena's eyes. She pulled Leo closer. "We'd also like to see the living environment," Ms. Wilson added. I touched Elena's arm. "It's standard procedure. Everything will be fine." The social workers were thorough, examining every room of the guest house, opening cabinets, checking smoke detectors. They noted Leo's room with its appropriate toys, the well-stocked refrigerator, the child safety locks on the cabinets. When they interviewed Elena about the pool incident, her voice shook but her account was clear. "I only stepped away to take a phone call from my former employer. The gate was supposed to be locked." "And who was supervising the child while you were on the phone?" "Mrs. Vance and her son Julian were there. They interviewed me separately and I provided the same account, emphasizing our safety protocols." "One thing puzzles me," I said. "How did you receive this report so quickly? The incident only happened yesterday afternoon." Ms. Myers consulted her notes. "The call came in at 6:15 yesterday evening. Just hours after it happened. Almost immediately." After concluding their inspection, Ms. Myers addressed us both. "We'll file our report. The living conditions appear more than adequate and there seem to be appropriate safety measures in place. We may follow up with additional questions." I walked them to their car, employing the subtle influence I'd perfected over decades as a CEO. "I hope you'll note in your report that this anonymous call appears to be malicious in nature. Elena Garcia is an excellent mother who has my full support." When I returned to the guest house, Elena sat rigidly on the sofa, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Leo had gone down for his nap, exhausted by the excitement. "They're going to take him away from me." Her voice was barely audible. I sat beside her. "No, they're not. The report will show that Leo is well cared for and safe." "You don't understand. This always happens. Whenever I start to feel secure, something happens." I leaned forward. "Elena, doesn't the timing strike you as odd? The pool gate mysteriously unlocked, and hours later an anonymous call to CPS?" She looked up, surprised by my question. "In business," I continued, "when I see a pattern like this, it means someone is making strategic moves against me. This wasn't random, Elena. This was targeted. She swallowed hard. Who would do that? That's what I want to know. Who benefits from separating you from Leo? Who would gain from discrediting you in my eyes? Fear flashed across her face again. That same fear I'd seen at the cemetery. I defended you today, I said quietly, and I will continue to defend you and Leo. But I need to understand what's happening. She stared at me for a long moment, as if making a decision. I need to check on Leo, she said finally. That evening, after Leo was asleep, Elena asked if I would sit with her on the guest house porch. The night was warm, crickets chirping in the darkness. Security lights cast long shadows across the lawn. I haven't told you everything, she began, her voice low, about Arthur. I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. We met at an architectural exhibition. I was working as a guide for my graduate program. He kept asking questions about the structural elements. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He was so different from what I expected. Thoughtful, interested in my opinions. She looked out into the darkness. When I got pregnant, he was thrilled. He wanted to do everything right. He said it was time to introduce me to you properly. But something changed. I prompted gently. Elena nodded. Arthur found something at the company. Financial irregularities, he called them. He started working late, going through records. He found shell companies, money being moved around. My chest tightened. The company, of course it would be about the company. The night before he died, he came to my apartment very late. He was pale, shaken. He said he'd discovered who was behind the embezzlement. Her voice broke. He was going to confront them after gathering more evidence. But first he made me promise something. She turned to face me directly. He said, if anything happens to me, it was not an accident. Take our child and run. Don't trust anyone, especially not Julian. The world tilted beneath me. Julian, my surviving son, Arthur's brother. The car accident was the next day, Elena continued. I was terrified. I packed what I could carry and ran. I changed apartments 4 times in the first year. I only felt safe at the cemetery because Julian never went there. I gripped the porch railing, steadying myself. You're saying Julian killed Arthur? I'm saying Arthur believed Julian might harm him, and then Arthur died. The pieces aligned with terrible clarity. Julian's insistence on handling the Elena situation. His immediate distrust. The mysterious unlocked pool gate when he was present. The conveniently timed CPS call. Why tell me now? I asked. Because you defended me today, and because I'm tired of running. Her eyes met mine, and because Leo deserves to know his grandmother. Inside the main house, I moved on autopilot to my study. I needed to think, to plan. If Julian had killed Arthur, if he was still actively trying to separate me from Elena and Leo, then they were all in danger. I picked up the phone and dialed Frank Delaney's number, not caring that it was nearly midnight. I need you to investigate my son Julian, I said when he answered, skipping any greeting. A pause. Mrs. Vance? Find the source of that CPS call today. Find Julian's connection to shell companies. Arthur might have been investigating 4 years ago. I took a deep breath, and I want his exact movements on the day Arthur died. Mrs. Vance, this is unusual. I'm aware. I'll need details about the companies Arthur was looking into. I don't have them, I admitted, but Arthur might have left something. After hanging up, I went to Arthur's old office down the hall. I'd preserved it exactly as he'd left it, part shrine, part inability to let go. Now I searched it with new purpose, looking for any notes he might have left about his suspicions. His desk drawers contained the expected items. Pens, notepads, business cards, nothing about shell companies or embezzlement. Of course not. Arthur wouldn't leave evidence in the open if he suspected Julian. I sat in his chair, trying to think like my son. Where would he hide something he didn't want Julian to find? Somewhere only I might look. I ran my hand along the underside of the desk, checked the backs of drawers, looked behind pictures. Nothing. Then I noticed the bottom drawer of the desk didn't close completely flush. I pulled it out fully, examining it more carefully. The back panel seemed shallower than it should be. I pressed on it, feeling a slight give. My fingers found the edge, and the false bottom popped up. Inside was a USB drive. When I plugged it into Arthur's computer, a password prompt appeared. I tried his birthday, his college ID number. Combinations of family names. Nothing worked. 3 days later, Frank arrived with his report. His face was grim as he laid out the evidence. The CPS call came from a burner phone, but we traced the location to a coffee shop near the office of Julian's personal assistant Meredith Cooper. She was seen on security footage entering the shop 3 minutes before the call was placed. I nodded, unsurprised. Regarding the financial matters, Frank continued, I found connections between Julian and 3 shell companies, Meridian Holdings, Westlake Investments, and Blue Harbor LLC. All 3 received transfers from Vance Industries accounts between 2019 and 2021. My hands tightened on the arms of my chair. And Arthur's accident. Frank hesitated. Julian was supposed to be at a lunch meeting with the CFO that day, but he canceled last minute. Traffic cameras picked up his car 2 miles from the accident site, 30 minutes before it happened. The final confirmation left me stunned, hollow. My younger son had killed my older son, and now he was trying to separate me from Arthur's child. What happens next? I asked, my voice hollow. The evidence is compelling, but it may not be enough for criminal charges. The financial records would require a forensic audit, and the proximity to the accident is circumstantial. I straightened in my chair, a cold clarity washing over me. We don't need criminal charges yet. First, we need to secure Leo's safety. Corporate takeovers had taught me patience, strategy. Julian had learned business from me, but he'd forgotten who the teacher was. I need one more thing, I told Frank. Arthur left a USB drive with evidence, but it's password protected. We need to access it. Frank nodded. I can bring in a specialist. No, I said, let me try something else first. After Frank left, I sat alone in my study, the weight of his revelations settling over me. Julian had killed Arthur, my own son had murdered his brother, and now he was trying to separate me from Leo. I needed that USB drive unlocked, but where would Arthur have hidden a password? He was careful, methodical. He would have left it somewhere secure but accessible to the right person. I remembered Elena's words about Arthur's final warning. He'd known he was in danger. He'd planned for the worst. That meant he would have considered how to get his evidence to me if something happened to him. Tomorrow I would speak with Elena again. Maybe she remembered something else from those final days, some clue Arthur might have left. For now, I had enough to begin. Julian wouldn't take another child from me, not while I had breath in my body. The morning after Frank's report, I knocked on Elena's door earlier than usual. My mind had churned all night with what I'd learned, and sleep had been impossible. She opened the door in her robe, her eyes widening at the sight of me. Amelia? Is everything okay? We need to talk, I said quietly. Is Leo still sleeping? She nodded, stepping aside to let me in. The guest house was warm, smelling of coffee and toast. She poured me a cup without asking, her hands slightly unsteady. You're scaring me, she said, sitting across from me at the small kitchen table. I'm sorry, that's not my intention. I wrapped my hands around the mug, grateful for its warmth. I need to ask you something specific about Arthur. About the last time you saw him. Her face tightened. Why? Because I found a USB drive hidden in his desk. It's password protected and I think it contains evidence against Julian. I kept my voice low, mindful of the sleeping child down the hall. I need to know if Arthur said anything at all, that might help me access it. Elena stared into her coffee for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were haunted. He came to my apartment very late. He was upset, more scared than I'd ever seen him. She swallowed hard. He told me he'd discovered who was behind the embezzlement. That it was Julian. He said he was going to confront him after gathering more evidence. I nodded, encouraging her to continue. Before he left, he gave me Benson, that old bear of his. He'd been keeping it for when the baby was born. Her voice softened. He said, if anything happens to me, remember our promise is kept in Benson. He'll protect you both. Our promise is kept in Benson, I repeated slowly. What did you think he meant? I thought he was being sentimental. That he wanted Leo to have something of his for comfort. She looked away. The next day, when I heard about the accident, I ran. I took very little, but I made sure I had Benson. Before I could respond, we heard the patter of little feet. Leo appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, clutching the very bear we'd been discussing. Grandma! His face lit up when he saw me and my heart contracted painfully. He climbed onto my lap without hesitation, Benson dangling from one hand. Good morning, sweetheart, I said, dropping a kiss on his head. Elena watched us with an unreadable expression. Leo, why don't you go wash your face and hands? Then we can have breakfast. He nodded and slid off my lap, still holding the bear. Can I see Benson for a moment? I asked gently. Leo hesitated, then handed over his treasure. Be careful with his ear, he said seriously. Mommy says it's special. My eyes met Elena's over his head. I'll be very careful, I promised. As Leo padded to the bathroom, I examined the worn bear more carefully. It was well loved, its blue fur matted in places. One ear was slightly darker than the other, repaired at some point. What's the story with the ear? I asked Elena. She nodded slowly. Arthur repaired it himself before. Her voice caught. Before the accident. When I was still pregnant. He was very particular about it. Said it needed to be done just right. I turned the bear over in my hands, my fingers exploring the repaired ear. The stitching was different, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Behind the ear I felt something unusual. A slight firmness where there should have been only stuffing. There's something here, I murmured, examining the area more closely. A small hidden pocket had been sewn shut with careful stitches, using thread that nearly matched the bear's fur. Elena leaned forward, her eyes wide. What is it? Carefully I worked at the stitching until the pocket opened. Inside was a small folded piece of paper. I extracted it gently and unfolded it to reveal a string of characters, letters, numbers and symbols. Just like a password. Elena stared at it, then at the bear. All this time, she whispered. I thought he meant the bear would comfort Leo, that it was about emotional protection. He was being literal. I said softly. This is the password to the drive. Leo returned and I handed Benson back to him with a smile. Thank you for letting me see him. I said. You take very good care of him. After breakfast I returned to my study, the paper clutched in my hand. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed the string of characters into the password prompt on Arthur's USB drive. The drive unlocked, revealing dozens of meticulously organized files. Financial records. Email screenshots. Meeting notes. Arthur had documented everything with the thoroughness that had always characterized his work. And there, at the root of the drive, was a file labeled simply Mom. I clicked it open to find a letter. Mom. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I'm sorry for the secrecy, but I needed to be certain before bringing this to you. Julian has been systematically embezzling from the company for years. I've documented the shell companies, the transfers, everything you need in these files. It started small but has grown into millions. When I confronted him privately last week, he laughed it off. Said it was his due, that I was father's favorite and would inherit everything anyway. I told him I was giving him one chance to come clean and make it right before I took the evidence to you. He became enraged, threatened me, said I'd regret it if I didn't mind my own business. I'm meeting with him again tomorrow with the full evidence. I hope he'll see reason. If not, I'll have no choice but to bring this to you and the board. If something happens to me, please protect Elena and my child. I've told her to run if anything goes wrong, and I've hidden this password where only you might eventually find it. I'm sorry for everything this will put you through. Know that I only wanted to protect what you and Dad built. I love you. Arthur. I sat back, tears blurring my vision. My son's words from beyond the grave confirmed what I'd already pieced together. Julian had killed his brother over money and position. And now he was trying to eliminate any connection I might have to Arthur's child. The grief that washed over me was quickly replaced by cold, clear purpose. I had failed one son. I would not fail the other. 3 days later, I sat at the head of the boardroom table, watching as the members of Vance Industries board filed in. Each nodded respectfully as they took their seats. Last to arrive was Julian, impeccably dressed as always, his smile confident as he greeted his colleagues. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I began once everyone was seated. As the notice indicated, today's meeting concerns succession planning for Vance Industries. Julian leaned forward slightly, his eagerness barely disguised. For years he'd been positioning himself for this moment. Before we discuss the future leadership of this company, I continued, there are some financial irregularities that have come to my attention that the board needs to be aware of. Julian's smile faltered slightly. Mother, perhaps we should discuss this privately first. I'm afraid this concerns the entire board, I replied, nodding to my assistant who began distributing folders marked confidential. As the board members opened their folders, I triggered the presentation on the large screens around the room. Financial records appeared, with key transfers highlighted. These documents show systematic transfers from company accounts to 3 shell companies: Meridian Holdings, Westlake Investments, and Blue Harbor LLC. My voice remained steady, professional. Over 4 years, these transfers total $17 million. The room had gone deadly quiet. Julian's face had drained of color. Further investigation has revealed that all 3 shell companies trace back to one individual. I clicked to the next slide, showing the ownership documents. Julian Vance. This is preposterous, Julian sputtered, rising to his feet. These are legitimate business entities, strategic partnerships. The documentation says otherwise, I replied calmly. But there's more. I detailed the harassment of Elena, the connection between Julian's assistant and the CPS call, the evidence placing Julian near Arthur's accident. With each revelation, Julian's composure crumbled further. And finally, I said, I have a recording I believe the board should hear. I connected Arthur's USB drive to the system. The room fell silent as Arthur's voice filled the space, methodically outlining what he'd discovered about Julian's embezzlement. He described his initial confrontation with Julian, the threats, his fear that Julian might take drastic action. Julian's face contorted with rage. Turn it off, he hissed. Turn it off. When the recording ended, Julian lunged toward me, his charm completely evaporated. He had everything, he shouted. The golden boy, father's favorite, your favorite. It was my turn. The board members recoiled in shock. He was going to ruin everything I'd built. Julian continued, beyond caution now. I offered him a partnership, a share of the profits. But no, St. Arthur couldn't soil his precious hands. I nodded to the security personnel waiting by the door. They entered along with 2 police detectives I'd arranged to have standing by. Julian Vance, one detective said. You're under arrest for embezzlement and the murder of Arthur Vance. As they led him away in handcuffs, Julian fixed me with a venomous stare. You choose him even now. I met his gaze steadily. I choose justice. 2 years later, I stood on a stage beside Elena, watching as photographers captured the groundbreaking ceremony for the Arthur Vance Children's Foundation. The spring sunshine glinted off the golden shovel in Leo's small hands as he turned the first soil. Elena, now the foundation's executive director, had just completed her master's degree with my backing. She looked poised and confident, addressing the crowd, explaining how the foundation would support children in need through educational programs and safe spaces. Leo, now 6, stood between us, Benson tucked securely under his arm. The bear was worn but lovingly maintained, a silent guardian connecting him to the father he would never know. As we moved through the reception afterward, a reporter approached me. Mrs. Vance, after everything that's happened, how do you want to be remembered? What do you consider your legacy? I looked over at Leo, who was showing Benson the architectural model of the new building. His smile, so like Arthur's, caught at my heart. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, I said quietly. It's who you leave behind. Elena met my eyes across the room and smiled. The Vance name, once sullied by Julian's greed, was being rebuilt through her integrity and vision, and through the innocent joy of Arthur's son, my grandson. Arthur would be proud of what we had salvaged from tragedy, of the family we had become. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. If you were in Elena's place, would you have trusted me with the truth or kept hiding it? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.